Speak Bitterness meetings were held in which the landlords and others linked to the defeated nationalists.
Land. At the end of the war, 2/3 of Japan's farmers were tenants.
Which transformed tenants into owners. These
When people hear the phrase land reform, most immediately think of left-wing political theory, specifically Karl Marx, who characterized it as a path to liberating the peasant and working classes to achieve socialism and ultimately communism. However, there were two notable outliers in this approach: General Douglas MacArthur during his occupation of Japan, and General Park Chung-hee, the general who challenged both Syngman Rhee's corrupt ass and an indecisive Korean Second Republic. Surprisingly, both were military men. In this video, I'll first define the problem and explain land reform, then discuss its pros and cons, then lastly, finally explain why land reform is important despite its drawbacks and past mistakes. Welcome to Yappertron. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. If you're new, welcome to my channel, where I make videos about niche and sometimes controversial topics. I won't guilt trip you into subscribing. Let's just get started. When Majoran and Charlemagne Sass died, there was this extreme power vacuum that just opened up in Europe. True to that power vacuum, lords swooped in, and they somehow were the floodgate between stability and misery. This led to the formation of a hierarchy, decentralization, and serfdom, where peasants are tied to the lords owning the land. This patchwork somehow persisted until monarchs became less dumb and actually know the extent of their power, so they centralized governance. That's how we got Britain and France today. The problem is that once people experience economic growth, they're going to agitate for social growth. As former serfs and peasants migrated to cities, starvation shot up and more. Then the French Revolution happened. Enlightenment ensued. Lots of beheadings and the pungent smell of corpses happened between. Then land reform happened to reclaim the land from the ancient regime. But first, let's define land reform. According to Seattle U, it is a set of reforms that increase the ability for the rural poor and other socially excluded groups to gain access to land usually owned by large conglomerates or families, with or without state compensation. It is very much misleading and narrow to say that land reform is this state-managed redistribution of land, which is true in some way, but it also encompasses land tenure protections and rights to the current possessors of land. In land reform, there are competing visions: statist ones and market-based. The most common form of statist land reform is just simply redistributing land titles from one guy to another, from one guy to multiple guys, or from one guy to no guys. Governments can either be conciliatory through compensation, or that they can be uncompromising with no compensation, as according to some theorists, landlords are parasites. Opposing theorists argue that landlords provide value not through work but through the building itself. Another statist approach is to just divide large, extensively used land into smaller, more intensively cultivable plots. The potential blowback here is efficiency, as splitting productive land into smaller productive plots is less optimized compared to one giant productive plot. Now let's talk about market-based reform.
I have Exxon at 86 and a quarter 6 months ago. Today it is trading at 36 and a half. Mr. Pratt.
You have Georgism, you also have market-assisted land reform crap. Now let's talk about Georgism. It's an economic theory made by someone obviously with George their last name. Just like with every other isms in the world, Henry George suggests that land is public and that its value should be taxed to fund government and public services. In short, a single land tax made to make landlords productive and help society. The groundwork for this theory is that land is not an individual asset, it is a communal one, meaning it's the community's asset, not an individual's. Then, market-assisted land reform argues that land reform should not be overly subsidized nor be seized by governments, because according to neoliberal theory, minimal intervention by the government will lead to market miracles. Basically, it ties back to the neoliberal economic theory by Milton Friedman. Now let's move on to the pros and cons of land reform. Here are the pros of land reform. 1. You basically make more land productive, which is good for increasing agricultural production and preventing rural and even urban starvation. You also prevent the country from being beholden to global speculation about agriculture, and that helps in your economy.
2. It helps to bring rural peasants out of the poverty line. When people are fed and can go to school, live holistically, and earn a fair profit or wage, they don't agitate. And that, the country is much more secure. Wow, that wasn't so obvious. Next is that they can make land even more productive and therefore grow the economy further through proper utilization. And that it also helps social mobility for rural peasants, as it funds their child's education and it possibly funds more business ventures for that peasant family.
3. In Japan, for example, tenant farmers before the war counted for a third in agriculture, with only 30% of Japanese farmers owning their land. After significant land reforms by General Douglas MacArthur by 1950, land ownership effectively doubled to 60%, contributing to the Japanese economic miracle.
Here are the cons of land reform. 1. Zimbabwe is an example on how large-scale land seizures don't work like magic hocus pocus, because in order to do that holistically, they first must educate the farmers on how to till the land. Next is that Zimbabwe's land reform didn't end well. It ended so badly that even Rhodesian apologists got some free ammunition even though the agriculture was literally just exploiting the tobacco glitch. 2. Land resale. One of the most blistering arguments used against land reform is that peasants will just sell the land and that they're back to square one. Basically, an unlimited money glitch cycle. Some countries like Mexico tried filtering beneficiaries to actual farmers, but these genuine farmers need to mortgage their land to get credit for seeds, irrigation, and mechanized equipment. Even with the cons, the idea of land reform shouldn't really be controversial because the idea of social mobility paired with modest to high rural agricultural growth when implemented right is a no-brainer compared to the perils of bureaucracy that might be a roadblock because they might not know what they're doing in the first place, which can be solved with technocrats, and possible mass casualties that might happen because if your country is unstable in the first place, then maybe you shouldn't do land reform. Land reform makes land productive and that helps in economic growth. It helps in industrialization, in national security, and making sure that your country won't starve during crises at the minimum.
Follow for more nonsensical yaps like these.